On a mild winter afternoon in August 1966, a young man flew his kite on the slopes of Vintem Hill in Niterói, Brazil. The location, known for its spectacular views of Rio de Janeiro across the bay, was a popular spot for locals. But what this boy discovered that day would spark one of Brazil's most enduring and perplexing mysteries. As he ventured further up the hill, he spotted something unusual: 2 bodies lying side by side on the grass. At first, he thought they might be sleeping, but something about their stillness troubled him. The boy rushed down to alert the authorities, and what investigators found when they arrived would baffle experts for decades to come. The bodies were those of 2 men, both dressed identically in formal suits, waterproof coats, and most strikingly, each wearing a lead mask. These masks weren't sophisticated pieces of equipment. They were crude, handmade eye coverings fashioned from lead, with no holes for vision. Beside them lay an empty water bottle and a packet containing 2 towels. A small notebook was also recovered, containing cryptic messages written in Portuguese. The deceased were soon identified as Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, 2 electronic technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes, a city about 200 kilometers away from Niterói. Both were respected members of their community, family men with stable jobs and no history of unusual behavior. That is, until the days leading up to their deaths. On August 17th, 3 days before their bodies were discovered, Manuel and Miguel told their families they needed to buy supplies for work and would return the same day. They carried with them the equivalent of 3 weeks' wages. The men purchased the waterproof coats from a shop in Campos dos Goitacazes and took a bus to Niterói. Along the way, they stopped at a bar where they appeared nervous and kept checking their watches. The mystery deepened when investigators examined the notebook found with their bodies. Inside were instructions written in Portuguese that read, 16:30, be at the specified location. 18:30, swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals, wait for mask signal. The reference to capsules was particularly intriguing, as no capsules were found at the scene, and toxicology reports were inconclusive due to the delayed discovery of the bodies. The lead masks themselves posed another puzzling question. Why would anyone craft masks from lead, a heavy metal known for its radiation-blocking properties? And why wear masks with no eye holes? The construction of the masks suggested they were made with care, despite their crude appearance. This wasn't a spontaneous creation. Someone had planned this. Adding to the intrigue was the men's choice of location. Vintem Hill, while offering beautiful views, had no particular significance in terms of their work or personal lives. Yet they had traveled hours to reach this specific spot, carrying these peculiar items with them. The investigation revealed that in the months leading up to their deaths, both men had been working on a mysterious project. Their families reported they had been spending long hours in their workshop, but were secretive about their activities. They had also been observed making calculations and studying complex diagrams, though none of these materials were found among their possessions. What makes this case particularly fascinating is its timing. The 1960s were marked by heightened interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena, especially in Brazil. Several high-profile UFO sightings had been reported in the region, and some theorists quickly drew connections between these events and the lead masks case. The men's families painted a picture of 2 rational, level-headed individuals who had never shown interest in paranormal activities. However, investigators discovered that both men had recently purchased several books about electronic circuits and radiation. They had also been seen meeting with unknown individuals in the weeks before their deaths. Their financial records showed no signs of debt or external pressure. Their relationships with their families were stable, and their work lives were unremarkable. This wasn't a case of 2 men running from something. They appeared to be running towards something. The autopsy results were frustratingly incomplete. Due to the state of decomposition, many typical tests couldn't be performed. The coroner could only conclude that there were no signs of violence or struggle. Whatever had caused their deaths had left no obvious physical traces. Local residents reported no unusual activities on the hill during the days in question. No strange lights, no unusual sounds, no suspicious gatherings. The only notable detail came from a woman who lived at the base of the hill, who recalled seeing a Volkswagen Beetle driving up the road on the evening of August 17th, but she couldn't identify its occupants. The investigation took several unexpected turns as authorities tried to piece together the men's final days. They discovered that Manuel and Miguel had visited a local electronics store in Niterói before heading to the hill. The store owner remembered them clearly because they had purchased some unusual components and had been very specific about their requirements. The water bottle found at the scene was another puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Analysis showed it contained only water, but why bring just one bottle for 2 people? And why were there 2 towels? These items suggested some kind of ritual or planned procedure, but their purpose remains unclear to this day. As news of the case spread, various theories began to emerge. Some suggested the men were victims of a cult, while others proposed they were conducting some sort of scientific experiment. The lead masks, with their radiation-blocking properties, led some to speculate about nuclear experiments or attempts to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. The notebook's cryptic message became a focal point of the investigation. The reference to protect metals was particularly intriguing given the men's background in electronics. Were they attempting to shield themselves or their equipment from something? And what was the mask signal they were waiting for? The investigation took an interesting turn when authorities began looking into similar cases across Brazil. While none matched the peculiar circumstances of the lead mask's case exactly, there were several instances of electronic technicians and amateur scientists who had disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances in the preceding years. One particularly relevant case occurred in 1962, just 4 years earlier, when 3 radio technicians in Minas Gerais were found dead in circumstances that bore some similarities. They too had been working on an undisclosed project and had left behind technical drawings and calculations. However, unlike the lead mask's case, their deaths were eventually attributed to accidental electrocution. The families of Manuel and Miguel provided investigators with additional details that painted an increasingly complex picture. In the weeks before their deaths, both men had been observed making late-night phone calls from public telephone booths rather than their homes. They had also been writing in notebooks, which were never found among their possessions, suggesting they had been deliberately removed or hidden. Their workshop in Campos dos Goitacazes became a focal point of the investigation. Police discovered electronic components arranged in unusual configurations, along with drawings that appeared to detail some sort of radiation detection device. However, several key pieces of equipment mentioned in their notes were missing from the workshop, leading investigators to believe they had taken these items with them to Vintem Hill. Further investigation into their finances revealed something even more intriguing. Both men had recently withdrawn their entire savings from their bank accounts. The money wasn't found with their bodies, nor was it ever traced. This suggested they had either spent it on something significant or passed it to someone else before their deaths. A breakthrough came when investigators interviewed a metallurgist who claimed to have helped the men obtain the lead used to make their masks. He described them as being extremely particular about the purity and thickness of the lead, suggesting they weren't simply creating crude protective gear, but rather implementing a specific design. The metallurgist also mentioned that the men had discussed theories about dimensional portals and the possibility of communicating across different frequencies of existence. While this might sound far-fetched, it aligned with certain scientific discussions of the era, particularly regarding quantum physics and theoretical parallel universes. Local UFO researchers began drawing parallels between the lead masks case and reported UFO activity in the region. In the months leading up to the men's deaths, there had been several documented sightings of unusual aerial phenomena around Niterói and Rio de Janeiro. While no direct connection could be established, the timing and location couldn't be ignored. The reference to capsules in their notebook remained one of the most troubling aspects of the case. Some investigators theorized that the men might have taken some form of psychedelic substance, which were gaining popularity in the 1960s for spiritual and experimental purposes. However, this theory didn't explain the elaborate preparation and technical aspects of their final days. A former colleague came forward with information about conversations he'd had with Manuel and Miguel regarding their theories about electromagnetic fields and human consciousness. According to him, they had become convinced that certain frequencies could alter human perception and potentially enable communication with other forms of intelligence. The investigation also uncovered that both men had been regular visitors to a small metaphysical bookshop in Campos dos Goitacazes. The shop owner remembered them purchasing books about spiritual practices from various cultures, particularly those involving altered states of consciousness and communication with non-physical entities. Their families noticed that in the months leading up to their deaths, both men had developed an intense interest in the work of George Adamski, a Polish-American author who claimed to have made contact with extraterrestrial beings. They had apparently been particularly fascinated by Adamski's descriptions of the technology allegedly used by these beings. The water bottle and towels found at the scene were subjected to detailed analysis. While the water showed no unusual properties, trace elements on the towels suggested they had been previously used with some sort of chemical compound. Unfortunately, due to exposure to the elements, the exact nature of these compounds couldn't be determined. As the investigation continued, authorities discovered that several other pairs of lead masks had been manufactured in the region around the same time. However, they were unable to locate any of these masks or identify who had commissioned them. This suggested that Manuel and Miguel might have been part of a larger group or movement that remained hidden. The timing of their death also coincided with a series of unusual electromagnetic disturbances reported by local radio operators. While these could have been caused by natural phenomena, the pattern and intensity of the disturbances were considered unusual enough to warrant mention in the official investigation. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence came from a taxi driver who claimed to have driven the men partway up Vintem Hill on their final evening. He described them as being calm and focused, speaking to each other in technical terms about frequencies and timing. This suggested that whatever they were planning, they were approaching it methodically, rather than in a state of panic or confusion. The investigation also revealed that both men had recently purchased several books on electronics and radiation protection, specifically relating to gamma rays and electromagnetic shielding. This technical preparation, combined with their spiritual research, painted a picture of two men attempting to bridge the gap between science and something more esoteric. The discovery of their reading materials led investigators down another intriguing path. Among the books found in their homes were several volumes on the Philadelphia experiment, a purported U.S. military project that allegedly attempted to make ships invisible by manipulating electromagnetic fields. While most dismissed this as pseudoscience, the technical aspects seem to have captured Manuel and Miguel's imagination. Their workshop contained another puzzling element that investigators initially overlooked: a series of hand-drawn diagrams showing what appeared to be wave patterns and frequency calculations. When these were later examined by physics experts, they noted striking similarities to theoretical models of quantum tunneling, a phenomenon where particles pass through seemingly impenetrable barriers. A breakthrough came when investigators interviewed a radio equipment supplier who had sold components to the men in the weeks before their deaths. He recalled them specifically requesting crystals that could oscillate at unusual frequencies. They had been particularly interested in harmonics and resonance patterns, suggesting they were attempting to create some sort of specialized communication device. The lead masks themselves underwent more detailed analysis in the following months. Specialists noted that the thickness and composition of the lead suggested they were designed to block specific types of radiation while allowing others to pass through. This level of technical consideration seemed at odds with their crude appearance, indicating a sophisticated understanding behind their simple design. Further investigation into their final days revealed another crucial detail. A shopkeeper near Vintem Hill remembered selling them batteries, an unusual quantity for personal use. This suggested they had brought electronic equipment with them to the hill, though no such devices were found with their bodies. The question of what happened to this equipment has never been answered. The notebook's reference to protect metals began to make more sense when viewed in the context of their research. Several theoretical physics papers from the era discuss the possibility of electromagnetic pulses damaging electronic equipment. Were they attempting to shield themselves and their equipment from some anticipated energy surge? Their families later revealed that both men had been particularly interested in the concept of consciousness transfer, the theoretical possibility of maintaining awareness while shifting between different states of existence. This interest was reflected in their book collections, which included works on both quantum physics and esoteric spiritual practices. A retired physics professor came forward with information about a conversation he'd had with Miguel several months before the incident. Miguel had questioned him at length about the possibility of creating windows between different frequencies of reality, specifically asking about the role of electromagnetic fields in such theoretical transitions. The investigation also uncovered a series of shortwave radio transmissions that had been detected in the area around the time of their deaths. While the source was never identified, the frequency patterns were unusual enough to draw the attention of telecommunications experts. Some suggested they might have been attempting to either detect or transmit signals at these specific frequencies. Another significant discovery came from their personal correspondence. Letters found in their homes revealed they had been in contact with a group of researchers in Argentina who were conducting experiments with consciousness expansion and electronic stimulation. However, attempts to locate these researchers proved unsuccessful, leading some to suspect this might have been a cover for something else. The toxicology mystery deepened when trace elements found in their tissue samples suggested exposure to an unknown compound. While decomposition made detailed analysis impossible, the patterns were consistent with certain psychotropic substances combined with an unidentified chemical compound. This supported the theory that they had indeed taken the capsules mentioned in their notebook. Local atmospheric monitoring stations reported unusual electromagnetic activity in the region during the estimated time of their deaths. While this could have been coincidental, the pattern of disturbances was notable enough to be included in the official investigation records. Some theorists suggested these disturbances might have been related to whatever experiment or experience the men were attempting. As the investigation continued, more details emerged about their final preparations. They had carefully selected the date and location, consulting astronomical charts and electromagnetic field measurements. This level of planning suggested they were attempting something far more sophisticated than a simple spiritual experience or amateur scientific experiment. The case has remained one of Brazil's most enduring mysteries, spawning countless theories and investigations over the decades. What makes it particularly compelling is the combination of technical expertise and apparent mystical beliefs exhibited by the two men. They weren't simply deluded enthusiasts, but trained professionals who approached their final experiment with both technical precision and spiritual conviction. Their deaths continue to raise questions about the boundaries between scientific exploration and metaphysical pursuit. Were they victims of their own misguided experiment, or did they perhaps succeed in ways we can't understand? The lead mask's case remains a testament to humanity's eternal quest to push the boundaries of known reality, regardless of the potential consequences. In the end, we're left with more questions than answers. What were they truly attempting to achieve? What happened to their missing equipment and research materials? And perhaps most importantly, what occurred on that hillside that led to their deaths? The lead mask's case continues to challenge our understanding of reality and remind us that there are still mysteries in our world that defy conventional explanation.